How do you think about understanding potential partners that may not be as established in the space to determine whether or not they're worth taking a flyer on or taking a chance because the innovation that they're presenting is so compelling?
It's not easy. It's a gamble. It may be that they're not going to be here in 6 months and then you did a whole lot of work. Smaller to mid-market groups have an advantage. We all have to be very careful. Make sure that we're bringing to our teams the right solutions.
It's hard to separate the signal from the noise and understand where the real benefit can be given.
You do have to balance that with making sure you're not bringing technology or somebody that can't handle the implementation and integration piece that comes along with it.
Well, welcome back to the Dental Economist Show. I'm your host, Mike Huffaker. Before we dive into today's conversation, a quick reminder, if you're enjoying the show, please be sure to like, subscribe, or even better yet, if you're feeling especially generous, leave a review. Your support helps us continue to bring valuable insights to dental professionals everywhere. Today, I'm very excited to welcome Clayton Russell, Vice President of Operational Strategy at Dental Care Alliance, one of the largest and most influential DSOs in the industry. Clayton's widely recognized for his ability to translate strategy into measurable outcomes, helping organizations scale smarter through operational discipline, technology adoption, and strong vendor partnerships. With more than 2 decades of experience across DSOs, manufacturers, and consulting, Clayton's led initiatives that delivered meaningful cost savings, production growth, and real-world AI adoption across hundreds of practices. Today, he's shaping how large dental organizations think about operations, innovation, and the future of dentistry. And for those that are not connected to Clayton on LinkedIn, he is also a great LinkedIn follow, a great LinkedIn connection, commonly sharing thoughts and insights with the dental community. Clayton, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. That was quite the introduction. So appreciate that. And yeah, it's great to be here. Pretty much probably watched every episode, and it's one of the best podcasts that we have going in our industry. So just appreciate you, and just really excited to be here.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I appreciate you saying that. I've been looking forward to this conversation. I love kind of your background and path that you've taken from a career perspective to get you from when you first started in dental to now with your role at DCA. I'd be curious, from sales to strategy, how, from your perspective, the choices and the roles that you've had lead you to where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, I like most, I don't think really had a plan to be in dental for 23, 24 years, and what's going to be the rest of my career. I can't imagine doing anything different at this point. Why would I want to? I love this community, this industry. So really, took the first best job that I could find that really was of interest to me, and that kind of started this journey in dental. And especially over the past 5 to 7 years, it's just gotten really interesting. I think the industry as a whole, not just my own career, but the industry as a whole has just evolved and morphed into something that, personally, I think maybe the Brian Caleos of the world saw coming a little more than a little more advanced than some of the others, but I certainly didn't see coming. So it's been quite a journey. I mean, to come from that sales side, I don't think there's many that make the leap over here into the DSO side. It's not for the faint of heart. I will say that. It's there's always a lot going on, and there's still a lot of work needed to be done, I think, within every group. But that's the fun part. I mean, that's where the strategy piece that you mentioned comes in. Every day I'm taking something from that sales background, and every day I'm engaging with our great vendor partners, sometimes our not so great vendor partners, but mostly our great vendor partners. And I think it really brings a unique perspective on how we work with them, being able to communicate what we need from them, being able to communicate to them what we're able to provide from our side as well is all important here. So yeah, it's been a journey, and it's been a great one, and I'm just looking forward to what we can do here over the next 20 years.
Yeah, it's a great example of how many doors can be opened in the dental space too. I mean, maybe it's a non-traditional path that you took, but it really illustrates that you can be in a DSO, you can move into a software partner, you can make that switch on the other side. There's many different paths and opportunities in this space for those that remain curious and interested and hungry and are out there looking to build things.
Yeah, that's the key. I mean, that really is the key. And just remaining curious piece, right?
Yeah.
Just, going down the path. So seeing the path, not being afraid to go down the path, maybe taking the leap into something that's within the industry, but down a different maybe a different road than you've been on. And I know you've done the same in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, VP operational strategy. How do you explain to your mom or family members what it is that you do?
I always start by saying it's an abstract role that's ever evolving as well.
Yep.
I mean, we're actually we're looking at different ways to kind of extend and morph where I can have impact within our organization also. So, when you say anything like operational strategy, a vague title, a growth, a strategic title like that, you really want to have kind of an all-encompassing view of the business. And I think when we talk about my background at the beginning here, coming from that sales background, working intimately with DSOs on the business development side, that was really my first exposure, probably 8 years ago now, into DSOs. What are they? How are they built? What does the structure look like? A lot of questions that I didn't have answers to at the time. Yep. So really, again, just being curious, digging in, and then eventually, ultimately, leading to my kind of joining on this other side of the business, if you will. It's an abstract role. It's a role that really tries to peel back layers of the business to see where we need help, what platforms can help with that, what vendors we can work with, how can we work better with the current vendors that we have, how do we better measure success. I mean, it's really it kind of pulls all of those pieces of the business together, where let's take a look at where our strengths are, let's be very candid about where our weaknesses are, and let's start to address those, and let's start to continue with the strengths. I think sometimes you can turn your attention and your strengths start to kind of scale back into your kind of medium strengths, or can even become a weakness if you let them atrophy. So it's a juggling act at all times, but I know here we have some amazing people in place across all our departments that are really driving this forward.
Yeah, before we started recording, you had kind of mentioned what your schedule looked like recently, and that you've been out in the market. You've been visiting practices. I think sometimes people hear the word strategy and they think, well, what a great role. This guy sits around and thinks about ideas all day long.
Ivory
Tower, yeah. What does it look like in reality?
It gets very different very quickly once you see the challenges that our people are facing. I mean, one thing we try to do here is really keep in mind who is being affected by the decisions that we're making. Planet, be it Overjet, be it Align Technology, everybody has a great new idea. And a lot of times in today's world, everybody has developed a new piece to their platform, a new piece of technology, usually a new piece of technology that incorporates AI a lot these days. So there's so much interesting stuff going on in the market, but it all comes down to the tip of that spear, which is our practice managers, our regional business partners, or regional managers, and the teams in that office. And when you get in there and you see it, and you maybe get approached by a patient or two, as I was, that had some really interesting, difficult to answer, off the wall kind of questions. You see what they're dealing with day in and day out, and the juggling act that they're going through, and just how difficult it can be, and people showing up late and rescheduling. And then we're trying to say, hey, here's a great new pilot or platform that we really want you all to be a part of. And we know it can have a huge impact. But meanwhile, somebody's fire alarm's going off at their house or their apartment building, and they have to go home. So they have to check out for an hour and a half that no one was expecting. We dealt with that a couple weeks ago. So an integral person here on the implementation of this pilot, she had to run. Her fire alarm was going off, so she was gone for an hour and a half, and you just can't plan for that. So that part has been the most interesting part, and just keeping those team members at the core of everything that we do from our side, so that they can then keep those patients at the focus of everything they do. That's the key.
Yeah, it's that from abstract to reality. There's these great concepts, great ideas, and great products, but getting them put in place to actually have effect and benefit at the practice level and for the folks that are working in those practices can be a big challenge. You mentioned how quickly things are moving, and they really are. Like there's so many advancements that are happening. It seems like every single week now there's a new tech startup that pops up or a new technology product that's coming to the market that's claiming to solve X, Y, or Z. It's hard to kind of separate the signal from the noise and understand where the real benefit can be given. And if you're in a practice, and I'd be curious as to your perspective, having spent so much time in practices, do the folks in the practice, are they kind of like, again, something else new? Like things are working as it is right now. Why do we need to do something different, even if there's a benefit? Like the old, maybe it's not broke, why fix it sort of mentality. Do you run into that? Is there excitement for the change? Like, what's your general perspective on the perception that is within the practices?
Well, I'm starting to chuckle over here because I just thought of, sometimes it is broke and no one wants to fix it. The change piece is the change management. I mean, like I said, I've listened to a lot of your podcasts. I listen to a lot of dental podcasts in general. So change management, I'm not saying anything revolutionary here that no one's heard. It is difficult to get it right. And it's very difficult on the teams that have to actually implement it. And they have settled into their ways. Many times those ways were settled even before they joined the group, and they had this other identity, and that can be embedded in there. And so you're dealing with that on some levels as well, that there was a kind of a prior dental group, smaller typically, right? The dental group identity embedded in there. And it's a difficult piece. And I think it starts with level setting. I think it starts with coming to those teams, being open, honest, transparent with what you're trying to bring to them. I've written a couple pieces that I've put on LinkedIn about working with the vendor themselves to have this structure laid out. I really think the better they can dig in on this implementation piece from their side to really understand the group. The group has to really understand what they're bringing to their teams, right? So this goes both ways. But on the vendor side, really understanding the group and how actionable change can be put into place is going to go a long way with the team members in there, because you deal with all those things that I just mentioned there ahead of time. So how do you get them to put anything in place on the office that can help, and eventually in the long run could be a big aid to them? But it might take a month and a half, 2 months even, for it to really get into the flow, and they have to do it over and over again to be able to recognize that. So not easy. I think really including them every step of the way, making sure they understand why the value's there. We really look for the motivated teams, to the motivated practice managers, the motivated regionals that are bought in and say, hey,
absolutely.
Either we know we have a problem here and we want to be better, or we know we just could be better in general. And that's the ones you really like, right? The ones that want to be better, even though they're pretty darn good.
So it is hard to run a DSO at scale. It's hard to run really any business, quite frankly. And I'd heard you mention on the podcast that you recorded with Matt McGaugh about some of the experience you'd had in all these different companies. From the outside, everyone might think that it's all calm and collected and under control. But from the inside, and I think this is true of all businesses, there's a lot of priorities, a lot of moving parts that makes things so complex and sometimes challenging to navigate. There's been not just, and this is not just a DCA call out, but across our industry in DSOs for the past couple of years, a lot of leadership changes, a lot of restructuring, a lot of reprioritization. There's been a lot of headwinds that the industry has been facing that we've all kind of had to navigate through. When you think about organizational change and kind of navigating through that, maybe a two-part question. One, does the change that happens in the corporate environment have a meaningful effect at the practice level? Are individual practices aware? Does it create concerns? I often think of like the term uncertainty breeds discontent. Mm-hmm. Like even if there's not actually anything bad happening and all the things that are happening are going to be for the better or for future improvement, just not knowing and being uncertain can create the negative perceptions or assumptions that people jump to. We struggle with that in our business all the time as well. So do you feel that affects the practice level? And then what is your kind of guidance or approach to navigating change at a corporate level?
No, it's a great question. And it's something that we deal with here in the DSO world as well. But, having been at Align Technology, having been at a big 3M, a 150-year-old Fortune 50 company that's just survived the test of time, you see it there too. And things can look very calm from the outside, while internally at times there can be some chaos or some turmoil that many don't recognize. So the same can happen here. I think in any corporate environment, you can find that. What you're really looking for are the people that can come in, that can have a vision, that can stabilize it, that want to be somewhere for the long term. I think that's what we've found here at this point. Just speaking of directly about DCA, we do have some long-term people in some leadership positions. James Nick is amazing for us. He's really the heartbeat of this organization. Joel Olivio, who I know I'm going to be speaking with, my panel partner there at Orbit. I mean, these guys have they put their heart and soul into this, and they care. The pieces that were getting implemented, they really want to see the growth, and they really want to see everybody do well. To answer the question about when there are some changes, and there have been here and other places as well, kind of a symptom of the industry is some of the macroeconomic factors have hit here pre, during, and post COVID. Big piece of that. Some of the offices feel it more than others, I would say. Some are a little more aware of the corporate piece. A lot of others in these offices are just trying to get through their day, or they're kind of more in their bubble. They're in their region. They're in their local area, and they're just really trying to be the kind of the best they can be in their own office. Or like I said, they're if a couple people call out of an office one day, or you have some weather events like we've had recently in the Southeast that have caused some shifts to happen in some working days, you're scrambling to try to get those pieces back together. Yeah. So it's really hard to look at kind of this broader picture and be affected by it. But I do think over time, I think it can permeate over time. So I don't think maybe while it's happening, it's as real time for the office and the team members there. But over time, I think that feeling and that overall general feeling of the direction of the organization can kind of permeate in there a little bit for sure. And that's what you really want to make sure that culture is really rooted and established there to kind of weather those times that every corporation faces if they have any kind of history behind them. So I just can't say enough. I think the team we have, it's been super impressive here. The people across every department, as well as the leadership, we're in a position to really do some special things because we have a lot of people that understand just what it takes to get this there, and the levers that need to be pulled, and how we need to go about doing this to have it actually work.
Yeah. No, I mean, speaking from an outsider's perspective, I agree with that perspective 100%. I mean, we've worked with DCA for a long time, and I've always been really impressed with the caliber of individuals that have had the opportunity to have conversations with and meet with and have conversations about where things are going to go and how we can work together as partners. And, I've heard you speak about the importance of vendor partnerships as not just a transactional item. And I can feel that when we work with you all, which is not always the case. Sometimes there can be a little bit of this antagonistic relationship that gets formed where it almost feels like folks are putting each other on different tiers as far as importance, and can be maybe a little bit condescending towards vendors, which always to me has struck me as an interesting approach because it seems like a short-sighted view towards long-term goals. How do you think about that?
We would all like things done quicker, more efficiently, more streamlined. I mean, there's all things we could point to. I'm sure there's things that Planet could point to DCA or point to other groups and say, wow, we'd love for them to be more buttoned up in this, that, or the other area. And it's very easy as a group on the other side to look at the vendor and say, well, why can't they do that more quickly or more efficiently? Or why doesn't this just work at a higher level? So I think it's the easy way out is to start pointing fingers and start to say, hey, why aren't you doing this? And you guys have failed us here. And sometimes those things have to be said in any partnership, right? You've got to hold people accountable. But as long as you're willing to work through those pieces, that's where you all have come in, and some of our better partners as well, the Henry Scheins of the world, like I mentioned earlier, Overjet, Align, the list can continue to go on.
Yeah,
that's where the real differentiator is. Is there someone there who cares enough to come to the table, usually a table being a Teams call or a Zoom call these days, come to the call prepared with a solution that can hopefully help to, turn the tide with whatever the problem is, that we're willing to work together. I mean, if this is a partnership, then let's work together. If we both have mutually beneficial goals, then let's work together to get to the other side of this. We're going to face problems. That goes without saying. I don't think it does anybody any good to demean one side or the other for where they're sitting. As long as we're kind of working on this together and pushing this thing forward, that's really where that vendor partner, I think you kind of referenced the article there. That was just the thought on my mind at that time, was just how do we make sure that more people in the industry understand we're pushing together. I think we do a pretty good job in dental. I really do. I mean, I think you see it in every meeting you go to. I mean, there's some real camaraderie and friends among the group and the vendors. We do pretty well. I haven't been in dental's all I've ever known, right? But I have a feeling we have to be up there if there was a satisfaction score or something like that between the vendors, the groups, or the private practices, and how well we're working together. You can feel that, but we don't always measure up to it as well.
Yeah. So I think software selection, any new type of technology for that matter, or new materials or new anything that you want to bring into practice, a lot of times the decision comes down to a risk assessment versus the potential outcome or benefit. And in an ideal world, you can minimize the risk of whatever that implementation is, and you maximize the benefit. With a lot of startup companies, they inherently have more risk because you don't necessarily know how well funded they are, whether or not they're going to be able to scale with you. Can they grow at the same pace? Will they be here 6 months? Is somebody else going to acquire them? There's so many questions, but that's also where so much innovation is born. How do you think about understanding potential partners that may not be as established in the space to determine whether or not they're worth taking a flyer on or taking a chance because the innovation that they're presenting is so compelling?
It's more difficult than ever. I will say that there's more people that you meet at Dykema, I'm sure Orbit, and everywhere else that we're going to be this year that have a new solution to maybe a new problem. Or maybe a problem that we've been trying to address for a long time. It's not easy. It's a gamble. It's the trade-off, right? Weighing the risk versus the benefit is difficult, and especially when you get to a certain size. I feel like these smaller to mid-market groups have an advantage on that front. I mean, if you have 15, 25, 45, even up to 100 locations, it's an easier gamble to take that risk. Still not easy. Still a lot of difficult roads ahead to get anything implemented. But you can be more willing to probably maneuver a little more quickly and add a little bit more of that risk side if that benefit side is really going to outweigh. We all have to be very careful to make sure that the solutions we're bringing to the teams, like I mentioned earlier, the end all be all, the tip of the spear, make sure the solutions that we're bringing to our teams are the right solutions. It may be that new startup is the right solution. It may be that they're not going to be here in 6 months, and then you did a whole lot of work on something that just has to be unwound, and you have to go back to the more legacy type of solution that's already on the market that you shunned in the first place to go with the upstart. So there's a balancing act. I feel like, on the tech side, with our tech leaders, personally here within our group, they've always kind of been on the forefront of this, and they've always been willing to examine what's next and what's coming, and that's been inspiring since I've been here to see, kind of, we're not afraid to take that leap with somebody if we've waited out and we see that this can be a really big benefit to us to kind of have that first mover advantage. So. But there's no great answer. I don't think it has to be case by case basis. We have some great type of startup organizations that we're working with that are showing a lot of promise right now too. So we want to stay on the cutting edge, but you do have to balance that with making sure that you're not bringing technology or bringing on somebody that just can't handle the implementation and integration piece that comes along with it.
Yeah. You made a great observation earlier in the conversation about strengths versus weaknesses, or, things that are broken versus things that are going well. And you made some type of comment related to, like, don't forget to continue to lean into those strengths. Like, you don't want to go away from that while you're trying to fix all this over here, and you lose the traction and the benefit that you have on this side. When you look at kind of your role today and your function within DCA, like, where are you prioritizing, where you think that the needle can be moved the most?
Yeah, I think you have to let your leaders from each segment of the business decide what's right for their segment of the business. They have to, we talk a lot about clinical autonomy. There has to be like departmental or leadership autonomy, not just from the very top. I mean, it's why people are leading these departments and why they were given these roles. So in some situations, people have to be given that autonomy to go and take the reins and vet out a solution, and then have the plan to go implement that at certain levels.
When you look at kind of like strengths of the organization versus areas where you could be areas of focus for improvement, or just maybe even tied to overall prioritization, are there certain initiatives that are really top of mind for DCA these days?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that probably should be top of mind for everybody, right? I mean, we have to stay very close with insurance and everything that's happening there, and payer and pricing. RCM is on the tip of everybody's tongue, and has been now for a couple of years, and some of those solutions have come to fruition, and I think others still have a long way to go on that front. We've been promised some things. I'm not going to name any names here, but there's some things that you keep getting promised, and some, hey, this is a problem we've had for a while that we're trying to solve, and different pieces of the business, insurance verification, and all kinds of different pieces of the business. But I really think if we focus on the partnerships of our doctors is huge. I think making sure that we talk about the partnerships with the vendors and the DSO a lot. There's other partnerships that are happening here too, right? And partnerships with the doctors, and making sure that everybody feels well supported, and everybody is well supported. I think there's some real headways that can be made with patient financing, and just understanding that a lot better. I think some of the larger groups out there have done a really good job on different pieces of that, be that with kind of doubling down with one of these patient financing partners that, as we have kind of some new entrants into the space over the past couple of years that have really made some headway, as well as some of these kind of aggregators or waterfalls and what they're able to do to be able to really open that up. I think the patient themselves, the expectation is that there's going to be some sort of financing option there to get them across the finish line. So, if we can continue to kind of focus on everything that we do, bettering the options for our patients and making our team's lives easier, that's kind of where we're going to continue to put our weight.
Yeah. You mentioned clinical autonomy earlier, and obviously that's the cornerstone of the DSO models, that there has to be clinical autonomy. I think for some period of time, for whatever reason, I was interpreting clinical autonomy as almost like the a lack of accountability, or an ability to not also have to be accountable for the strength of the business or other things that are happening within an individual practice. And of course, a DSO comes in to remove all these barriers and these obstacles from the individual practice so that it can really be about the patient and the provider and the time that's spent in the chair and providing great patient care. All that being said, one thing that we see a lot in the data is there's a lot of practices that perform really well, like, that are doing a great job. Their case acceptance is fantastic. Their patient attraction and retention is really incredible. The clinicians are leaning into new technologies. They're adopting and embracing AI. They might be implementing things like Curidont and adding new lines of service or specialty, and you're seeing this growth. But what we also see is, even though 60 to 65% of the group, the locations that we see are growing, there's still that 30 to 35% that are struggling, which I think in a DSO environment where you start to scale and you get larger, becomes like the challenge for the entire organization to show that kind of year over year growth and strength. How do you all approach when you have underperforming clinics? I know that's kind of like the hard conversation to have.
Well, it's a broad question.
The discussions that people don't want to talk about. And it is a broad question, but it's, you talked about leaning into strengths, but I think here's an example of where in some cases people almost prefer not to shine the light on that because it's the harder the harder problem to solve sometimes. And I'm just curious from your perspective, how you all think about that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to analyze underperforming practices, and you almost have to look at them from all angles, which we always try to do. There's the numbers, right, that can be kind of seen, and thankfully, with platforms like Denticon, we can see that more clearly than ever. Yeah. Now, but there's a lot of other pieces that can go into an underperforming practice. Has regional leadership fallen short or had some turnover in there? Has the local leadership, the practice manager, have you had some turnover there? Doctor turnover. Different doctors have different skill sets or maybe different pieces of the business that they're interested in. So if one of them leaves or goes to another office or just whatever the case may be, some other life events that happen, right, to all of us, including our amazing doctors. So you really got to dig in on, I think, the why. Everybody talks about their why, but there's a why here too, that it's can be really multifaceted. And so I think you can dive in too quickly if you just see the numbers, or if you just say, oh, it's a doctor issue, or if you just say it's a hygiene issue, or just say it's a team member issue or a management issue, you're going to miss some piece of it, and you may miss the opportunity to really help that office get turned around. So first things first is identifying the actual problem or multiple problems, and then hopefully having pathways already built out and having kind of a strategic roadmap on how to deal with each of those. And if you can standardize that process, and standardization is a little bit of a dirty word in this business because it kind of goes against autonomy. But if you could just have a process standardized of how we handle each of these different situations, what that looks like, where we've seen success in the past, where we've seen this work, a lot of times that can fall back to using all resources at your disposal. So internal and external. We talk about some of these vendor partners. A lot of these vendor partners have a lot of resources and education and different pieces at their disposal that can help with exactly what you're talking about. But yeah, it is the most difficult problem to deal with. I think you're right. I don't think people talk about it maybe openly and outwardly enough, but it's certainly talked about internally a lot. Yeah. And it's something that, we are really trying to keep a very close eye on, and have been for some time now, on just how are we, we're always aspiring to be what a DSO should be and provide that level of support. And that includes when offices maybe start to slip a little bit, that we can bring them real solutions that help get them back on their feet.
Yeah, that was a very nuanced answer and a very good one. So I appreciate you sharing that. In the last couple of minutes here, I just had to ask. I was looking on your LinkedIn profile and I saw the Bell Institute pop up. And so, from a professional development perspective, I keep hearing about the Bell Institute. I first heard about it in a conversation I had with Brandon Halcott, who had founded True Family, sold to Heartland, and then now he's got Save a Dental as his new group that he started a year or so ago. Then, of course, Pat Bauer has always extolling the benefits of the Bell Institute. How did you end up hearing about it? And what's your perspective of that experience of going through that training?
I would love to give the Bell Institute a nice plug here. It was amazing. I mean, not only are they located, I'm in Charlotte. They're located, not too far. I won't say down the street, but not too far. They're in Chapel Hill, and Dr. Bell is a pretty legendary professor there and doctor there of psychology, I believe. I don't want to misstate. And he's developed a program, and that team is just unbelievable. And you see them at a lot of our dental conferences now, right? They've realized that I think there's a lot of dental organizations that are very interested, and I think they've gained a lot of traction on this side. So it's a very introspective course. I think we've all done a disc profile or filled out something online, and maybe we've even taken that to a meeting and we all look through those and see how to better handle ourselves. This is much more in depth than that. This is getting people that know you intimately within business, outside of business. It could be an old personal friend, could be your wife, to fill out kind of their idea of who you are before you go in. And I think that when you aggregate all of that together and you have 12 of those people that you used to work with, of kind of who you were, right? Maybe 15 years ago that you work with now, leaders, direct reports for you, people that are your direct reports, spouses or family members. I mean, that can give you a pretty good idea of how people are.
Sounds scary.
It is a little scary because over 2 days you really dig in, and I just love the process that they have. It's so hands-on. Honestly, this sounds like, I don't know if they're an advertiser for the show here today, but it sounds like they are, because I just really enjoyed it. It was the best leadership course I think I've ever been to.
That's awesome. I've just personally been very curious about it for a while now. So I've never heard a poor thing said about the experience. And so, I might have to explore that some more.
If you go with the team, I think it just adds the value. When you're going through it together, you're learning a lot about your team members.
Cool. For sure. All right. Last question. What are you most excited about for this upcoming year? I mean, we just crossed into February, but as you look forward to the rest of 2026, anything that's just kind of really creating the daily excitement when you wake up that you're looking forward to working on?
Yeah. I think last year the answer would have been, AI or tech, and there is still some great things coming. It feels like we're kind of settling back a little bit into reality here on that front. Like I said, great pieces coming. It still has a lot of promise, and I still think we're going to get there. It's just not as maybe buzzy as it was. What I'm really looking forward to in 2026 is it feels like we've come through the valley that was kind of post-COVID, that everybody, you heard economists and the dental economist show, so we'll talk a little bit about economists here, talk about it, that, hey, this tsunami was coming past COVID and we don't know what it's going to look like. And the good times couldn't roll forever coming out of that, and some artificially inflated pieces of our industry and through government or whatever else. And then, so it feels like we did kind of take a dip, and there were some it was very difficult the past couple of years. This business is always difficult. I don't mean to say it's not going to be in 2026, but I think we have an opportunity here. I talked about all the departments earlier. It seems like every department head is working on something that can have a big impact on the business. And it seems a lot of groups have become a little more aware of how we're going to go and integrate and implement these different pieces. We have more data than ever, so we're able to analyze it. And from that analyzation, we can bring even better solutions, or we can pivot if we need to, whether it be in certain locations or across the entire enterprise. We can pivot to what may be a little better direction for us. So it really feels like we've been dialing in the past couple of years a lot of these pieces that 2026 is going to bring them to fruition. And that, to me, I mean, that's an exciting time, right? That's what
absolutely.
everybody wants, is when, we're making our lives easier of our team members, maybe making our lives easier of some of our management team as well, just through some of the solutions that a lot of people have been putting their heart and soul into over the past couple of years, and have been dialing in and seen some success. And now it feels like we've got the foundation piece there, and it's really ready for some of these more advanced ways of looking at the business to really take hold.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining. Really enjoyed the conversation, and looking forward to seeing you in a few weeks out in Scottsdale.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You got it. The Dental Economist Show is brought to you by Planet DDS. To find out more about how cloud-based dental software by Planet DDS helps unleash dentists and their staff to focus on patient care, visit www.planetdds.com. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes by following wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.